Hi, I'm Susan Havermail, Director of Tourism for Orange County and the host of Collage. Our show, Collage, introduces you to creative people in the forefront of art and culture from all over the Hudson Valley. Join us to meet visual and performing artists, hear their stories, and see their artwork. Welcome to Collage and the Hudson Valley's Art Odyssey. Our special guest today is Shawn Del Joyce, artist, environmentalist, and founder of the Wallkill River School, where we are today. Welcome, Shawn.
Thank you, Susan. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Well, it's wonderful to be here with you, too. You have a tremendously diverse background. Can you tell us something about that?
Well, I guess what makes me unusual as an artist is I started out as a farmer. I grew up in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas, which is very southern, basically growing oranges, grapefruits, bananas, tangerines, and so forth. So it was tropical, it was hot, and in between working, I would draw. I was very much interested in science and farming, and didn't really intend on pursuing a career in the arts until I went off to college. So the defining point for me happened in 1982 when I graduated from high school. We had an unseasonable frost in Texas, and actually it was one of the early signals of climate change in that region.
Many different aspects of your life. Tell me, when did you realize that you were an artist?
Well, when I was a little girl, I would draw pictures in the dirt, and I would be sitting out in between the rows of trees drawing. And that was really how I occupied myself. I was brought up by a single parent, in this case my father, and his profession was a commercial artist. And he designed restaurant interiors that were magical and fantastic. So he would take a building and turn it into a train station. And a lot of what I did as a child was work in his studio for him as unpaid slave labor.
Do you come from a family of artists? Was he the only artist, or are there others as well?
Actually, I come from a family of scientists and farmers, and he was a bit of an oddball.
And were there other artists in the family?
No, actually, his father was an inventor and a farmer, and he's the one who owned the citrus farm, but he had a huge studio at the end of his property that had small aircraft, and he designed what would have been the Flying Wing in 1945, later became the stealth bomber, and he's credited by the Air Force as the inventor of the stealth bomber.
So he was more like a sculptor.
Yes, he was.
So there are many artists in your family, actually. Do you have artists in the family now?
Well, not exactly. My son follows in my grandfather's footsteps, and he's very much interested in building things with his hands. And I just encourage him to do what spirit moves him to do.
What has been the biggest influence in your art?
Losing the family farm has been the single biggest influence on my art. Also on my politics. It has helped to shape me as an environmental activist.
Most people would think that environmentalism and art were two entirely separate careers or subjects of focus. How do you combine those?
Well, I didn't actually combine them. The Hudson River School were America's first environmentalists. And they actually did many paintings about the loss of the deforestation of the Hudson landscape to feed the iron industry and the mills, and about the industrialization of the Hudson River with the trains snaking up the sides of the mountains and the steamships in the Hudson. So this is not a new concept. I'm just following in the footsteps of artists who have gone before me.
And great footsteps those are. We're very lucky to be living in the Hudson Valley, where that first school of painting started for the United States, actually, from 1825 to 1875. Those are beautiful paintings, as are yours. So that was a major influence for you in your artwork and landscapes. And tell us more about what you like to paint and what you do paint.
Okay. Well, in terms of landscapes, the Hudson River School was a place-based art movement. Their paintings clearly depict our region. The Wallkill River School is similar in that we consider ourselves place-based, but we're more local. We are an Orange County phenomenon, and we have been described by Hudson Valley Magazine as Orange County's first homegrown arts movement. And really, that's more of what I'm thinking in terms of the landscape painting. If you were to look at my paintings, you get a sense of place. You see these farms. You see the cattails being crowded out by purple loosestrife. You see a lot of the changes that are happening in our region chronicled in the paintings that I produce, as well as my contemporaries.
Well, and I know that farm paintings are very dear to you, and you also did something quite remarkable in combining that in a book. Do you want to tell us about that wonderful book you produced?
Well, the mission of the Wallkill River School is to create economic opportunity for artists, as well as to preserve our regional agricultural heritage. So I can't imagine combining the two more beautifully than in making a cookbook.
And it is beautiful.
So the cookbook epitomizes what the Wallkill River School is about and about what my art is about. All art is similar to a social virus. For a painting to take root, it transmits an idea through the community, through the people. People take a look at it, they grasp a concept like eating local, and it gets passed on to the next person and so forth. The cookbook is a vehicle for that. They hold the cookbook in their hands, they read the family history of different farmers, they get an attachment to the farms, they have a sense of place, they read about the history as well as the culture, they see our paintings. When you see a farm through an artist's eyes, it's a totally different experience than driving by it on the road every day on your way to work. It suddenly becomes a beautiful and magical place.
Well, it also explains a lot about our farms and what they produce, and seeing it in those pictures that are in the cookbook, because you know I have one, I have more than one actually, is just such a wonderful description of Orange County and what we really are here. And your depictions are marvelous. I know that there are other artists also who contributed to the book. There are quite a few, aren't there?
Oh, yes. There are many artists who are members of the Wallkill River School and some who aren't. We had it open to anyone who wanted to produce work for the cookbook.
It's excellent. I love mine. I really do. Getting back to your artwork, though, tell us a little bit about the process in producing your art.
Okay. Well, for me, there's a twofold process. I produce two different types of work. I'm a plein air painter, which is French for outdoors. And that's along the lines of what many of the Impressionists did. They would take their easels out into the gardens and paint. And in my public persona, as the director of the Wallkill River School, I am primarily a plein air painter. The second part is me personally as an artist. A lot of the paintings I make that are near and dear to my heart are done as commentary on the times, very personal commentary. They're about my experience as a woman in this culture. And so those have a different process. Those are more of an intellectual process. The two biggest influences on me as an artist are Judy Chicago,
who I love, by the way,
and the Hudson River School.
Another great love.
Yes, so to combine the two, you know, you have plumber, ballerina. These are two very different influences. So I produce some art that I show quite extensively, locally, and some that has not really seen the light of day.
Interesting. When will they see the light of day?
Probably after I'm gone.
Well, you know, it's interesting because you also talk about the political focus of some of your paintings, and certainly the Hudson River School carried that same feeling of wanting to protect the land and showing it to people so it could be preserved. You feel also that you're doing the same with your artwork.
We are. We're doing it not only with our artwork, but with activism. The Wallkill River School partners with the Orange County Land Trust and also other nonprofits, Phillies Bridge Farm, Black Forest Consortium, and so forth, to preserve and maintain open spaces and small family farms in the county. This summer alone, we're visiting 6 sites, some of which are in danger of development, some of which have been preserved. And we're taking artists out of the inner city and putting them in these farm fields, which many of them have never been to a farm or seen green beans growing on a vine where, as they think, they all come from a can. So we take artists, we put them in the fields, they make paintings of the farms, they get a visceral connection with the land that sustains them. Then we auction off these paintings and give half the proceeds to the Orange County Land Trust, in this case, or the farm, and we help to keep their good work going in our county.
I know you're keeping that spirit going here in the Wallkill River School. Do you think that viewers, people who buy the art, are aware of the almost political statement behind it?
I think most of them are. But the people who buy our work have an emotional connection with the painting, and that's why they choose it. In many situations, we do probably about 12 to 15 live auctions a year. We do almost one a month. In most of those situations, the people who are purchasing the paintings are there to consciously make a donation to the nonprofit. So our paintings are a perk. But we also run a gallery, and in the gallery, we sell about $2,000 worth of fine art every month, if not more. And the people who come into our gallery and buy the paintings are people who fall in love with the paintings. These are not art collectors coming up from the city on a whim.
These are people who really like the depictions of Orange County.
Yes, they're our neighbors. They're school teachers in the local schools. They're the person who works behind the counter at the deli. You know, they're local people who walk in and have an experience in a gallery for the first time. Art is a wonderful medium for social change because a newspaper article will give you the facts or possibly someone's opinion, and you can set it down and forget it. But an image that you live with is indelibly marked on your memory. You will hold it in your mind and heart.
Where are Shawn Del Joyce's images indelibly fixed? Galleries? Other people's homes? Museums? Tell us where.
My focus is here. I'm local. I'm place-based. I'm not an international artist. I spent 15 years in the city building a career, and I reached a high level of success when I realized that the art world is really empty and vacuous, and there's not much heart and soul in selling to an international art market. To me, what makes a big difference as an artist is doing something at home, sinking your roots into a community, and creating art that's integrated into people's daily lives.
Which brings us right to the Wallkill River School. And tell us where we are here. What is this building?
We're sitting in a 200-year-old historic landmark. This is the Patchett House, and it was originally the home of the Patchett family that owned the woolen mill down at the end of the road. I'll tell you more about the woolen mill later, but the house is currently owned by the Devitt family, and they are our landlords. And if it weren't for their generosity, the Wallkill River School wouldn't inhabit this lovely building.
And what goes on here?
Well, we run a nonprofit gallery, which is a cooperative art school with class children. Started 18 months,